give about 1 more minute for people to arrive. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Hi to all of those that are here in person. Thank you so much for coming to the forum for the Vice President of Business and Administrative Services at DVC. This is an open forum. We have about 50 minutes for the forum, so each candidate will start off with a 3 to 5 minute brief introduction, and then we'll have about 35 to 40 minutes for question and answer. I will help to start off some of the questions and give you an opportunity to write some questions as well, and then we'll give the candidate a chance for a 5 minute final statement at the end of the open forum. So in the back, most of you I think already have an index card, so you can write any questions that you have. If you have questions that you want to write down, Sophia will be walking around to pick those up. She is the EEOC for this, for the whole process. You've met Sophia multiple times. She's the EEOC for all the whole process, and she will be screening the questions before they are submitted. And then all of you should also have a pink sheet that we would want you to all fill out after the forum just to answer questions about the forum. So I'm going to just go ahead and read what was sent out by Julie about the candidate. So our first candidate is Dr. Todd Hampton. He is currently the interim executive director of business services at Pasadena City College. Before that, he served as the interim executive director of facilities and construction and also the manager of IT support services, all at Pasadena City College. He has a PhD in educational leadership from Cal State University Northridge, a master's of business administration from the University of Laverne, and he has a bachelor's of science in management information system from Bellevue University, as well as an associate's degree from in social sciences from the College of the Canyons. So with that, I'll introduce Todd, and we'll give him his 5 minutes for his introduction.
Thank you very much. I assume this is working. Everyone can hear me. Yes. I'm so loud. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to those who are watching in your offices or watching later in your offices, or hopefully not my wife at home so she can critique me later. As you mentioned, I'm Todd Hampton. I'm currently the interim executive director of business services at Pasadena City College. Prior to that, I was interim exec director of facilities, and prior to that, the manager of IT support services. Just a housekeeping note, it's an EDD, not a PhD. Close enough, right? But I do have a doctorate in education from Cal State Northridge, and then you heard the rest of the education. I'm a proud community college alum. I love this system. I am rounding into my 10th year at community college. Started off at Moorpark College, which was one of the 3 colleges in Ventura County Community College District, as their IT support services manager, or supervisor, I think it was called. They waited till I left to make it a director. It was awesome. I'm not bitter at all. How I came into my current role was really my vice president called me into his office one day. He said, the facilities director is no longer with the college, and what do you think about running facilities for a while, which, as anyone with the vice president knows, is not a question, but an assignment. So I took that role on, dove right in, did what I could to help that department kind of realign where it needed to. And then we hired on a permanent full-time facilities director, and kind of the same thing happened in business services. It was, hey, we've got a couple of things that need taken care of over here. Will you do the same thing in business services? So of course I said, absolutely, I'm happy to help. And now I'm here. I'm excited for the opportunity at Diablo Valley. It's a beautiful campus. I had a little bit of time yesterday and today to do some wandering around. I actually got cut off by this row of geese today. I thought the student ambassador was kidding when he said how many there were, because I saw like one previously, but is what it is. And I'm really looking forward to this process and answering any questions that you may have. So I'm happy to turn it over and go from there. And I'm sure I'll touch on the other things that may be of interest to you in the next 48 minutes or whatever.
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, there are index cards in the back of the room. If you didn't pick up one already, please feel free to pick up an index card, write down a question, and as you're doing that, Sophia will preview the questions and hand them to me once they're written. So before we receive questions from the audience, I do have a couple of questions for you. The first question is, why do you want this job, and why specifically Diablo Valley College?
Right, that's a common question. So I'm a Southern California kid, right? I born and raised in LA County, and I live 6.7 miles from Pasadena City College right now. You know, there's a couple of reasons that I want this job specifically. One, again, it's a great college, right? You guys do amazing work. You've been around forever doing great things. One of the top in the state. You know, so we know all the amazing work that's happening in Diablo Valley. In point of fact, you know, I am still an interim. We have to address that you know, 100-pound gorilla in the room, and I don't like being an interim anymore. I'd like something that's a little more permanent, and someplace that those of you that have had interim appointments may remember that sometimes, like, you say something and they're like, oh, you're just an interim. You know, you're not going to be around for very long. That's not what I want. I want something that's a little bit longer term. I enjoy a challenge. I enjoy kind of diving into something that I haven't done directly for a little while. I do have transferable skills, certainly, as you know, managing multiple groups and a good bit of what is under the purview of this vice president position. And I'm at a spot, and I've shared this, you know, in my interview with Susan earlier, that, you know, I'm at a spot in my life where I can do this. You know, my kids are grown. They're back from university and supposed to be living on their own, but they're back in the house because they can be. But they don't need me around every night, right? My wife has her career. She's at a school that she loves. You know, she's got projects she's working on. She's commuting all the time anyways. I see my family on the weekends as it is. So I'm at a good spot in my life where I don't have to be, you know, really close to where I live full time anymore. I have the opportunity to kind of move around and see some other parts of the state. And, you know, Diablo is a great place to be, right? People here seem happy. Students seem happy. I've enjoyed all the open space and the wildlife, and the fact that there's seating everywhere, and that everyone seems to be kind of a part of this little community, right? And that I kind of, you know, so to speak, I like what you're doing with the place. So I'd love to be a part of it. I'd love the opportunity to kind of bring some of it together and put my spin on some of it.
Thank you. Next question. What would be your goals the first 30 days of the job?
The first 30 days is really more of a listening opportunity. It's a time for me to get to know my team, to get to know the folks that I can in 30 days. I mean, we're only talking, what is that, 20 work days, 22 work days. But to get to know some of the key people on campus and who it is that I need to make sure to build relationships with, and find some of the non-publicly available priorities for the school, right? Like I can read all the material that's on the website, but I don't know what's in your guys' head that's necessarily important and where I can help. So I would want to spend 30 days finding out what perceptions are of, you know, my various departments, what perceptions are of the campus in general, where it is that I can really most effectively start making any necessary changes or bolstering up those things that need to be done, and, you know, those people with whom I'll be partnering over the next however many years you'll have me, right? But really 30 days is just enough time to really start getting to know the people and getting to know the school and getting to know what people see it as important in the little bit of the politics behind what makes us run. And hopefully it's enough time for me to figure out who I need to turn to when I do need to address something, right? When I need help with something, who on campus is it that I can either go to that can answer the question, or that can lead me to the right place where I can get those resources that I need.
Okay. Next question. Given your knowledge of our current educational master plan, decision-making, program review, and resource allocation processes, how would you, as our next VPBAS, support our efforts in implementing our educational master plan? Where do you see opportunities to improve our resource allocation process? Wow. Let me know if you need me to repeat any of that.
I might need you to repeat that, but let's see if I can get it all. So I did spend some time looking at your EMP, and was happy to see language that stated that we're already starting to move some of our core values as to part of our resource allocation resource allocation process, right? So, excuse me, I definitely would want to look at, I'm curious to know what that looks like. How is it that we're building equity and inclusion? How is it we're building excellence in student learning and moving those core values that have been identified into that process, right? So is there a form, is there a line, is there something in it that says, tell me how this request addresses equity, and then how are we going about, say scoring it? So, you know, one of my priorities on that would certainly be just to take a good, honest look at the process and talk to the folks that have been involved in putting it together to find out really what that looks like. I do think that one possible improvement, again, not knowing the details of your plan, you know, I may be speaking out of school here a little bit, but I do think that one place that this position could potentially help with moving the educational master plan forward in line with the resource allocation process is to help with the budget committee to say, okay, are we moving the ball forward? Are we addressing equity and inclusion? Are we addressing excellence in student learning when we look at these and when we prioritize these resource requests? But also to maybe take a look at the entirety of the requests, you know, as a list, and these are our priorities. Start looking at where our categorical funding can be applied to what's already on the priority list, and then fill in the blanks where we can with our general fund monies. You know, and this would be to avoid the last minute of the excuse me, the last minute of the fiscal year when someone's sitting on $1 million of a grant that they get to, oh my gosh, I need to spend this right away or I lose it. And just so we don't lose money, we spend money on something that maybe might look great on paper, might help, but doesn't necessarily move the ball forward in accordance with our plan, with our goals, and with our stated priorities. I think I may have answered that. Okay.
And guess who wrote that? So, okay, next question. Describe your experience with the ADA, Americans with Disability Act, with regard to facilities and human resources, particularly any projects you completed that exceeded the minimum requirements of building codes and state laws.
Okay. So I would say most directly my involvement with that, excuse me, would be to, I spent a good deal amount of time working with our project architect on putting together the plan to address all of the ADA and accessibility deficiencies on campus at Pasadena City College. College was founded in the 1920s, right? So obviously it's not up to current standards, not up to current codes. And there's no way we can address all of it. So, we worked with the architect to put the entirety of the accessibility plan together to figure out what it was we could do and take some of the low-hanging fruit and take some of the things that would make the largest impact and make kind of a big difference for as many students as possible and at least start us to move us towards compliance with the ADA. One specific project that I've spoken about already previously today was what we called a barrier removal. We had, excuse me, where our accessible parking area was, there was this long traverse that our wheelchair-bound students had to go through that took them kind of like all the way around to the back of the building, almost in through a service entrance, because our administration building, being built so long ago, only had stairs leading up to where it put you right on the second floor, unless you kind of came around to the back through this cracked and warped section of roadway. So the project we did addressed that, right? We ripped out all the cement, re-poured it so it was actually an accessible path of travel, and excuse me, could get our students into the building. But it's a small thing, right? We're addressing signage, we're addressing other small ADA compliance issues. But more importantly than the specifics of projects that we need to look at to help address things is moving forward. I'm a big advocate for looking at universal design as opposed to just meeting the bare minimum of what ADA requirements are, right? For example, I believe when we do a parking survey, it should not be to make sure we have the right number of accessible spaces based on law, but the right number of accessible spaces based on law and the need of our community right now and our community that we see moving forward, right? So compliance with the law is great, But we need to, in my mind, we need to weave this into everything we do, right? Universal design should be a part of every construction project moving forward because it's not necessarily law now, but it's the right thing to do for all of our students. And if we as a college and as a district choose and present that, you know, equity is important and diversity and equity and inclusion are a part of everything that we do, then we really need to kind of put our money where our mouth is, so to speak, right? And say, okay, everything we do moving forward is going to conform to these standards. And everything we do moving forward is going to make sure that we're as inclusive as possible to as large a group as possible. And I don't think the law is ever going to get there, quite frankly, but that doesn't mean that we can't and that we can't be the leaders in doing so.
Okay, the next question. What are your strengths and weaknesses relative to the position of the VPBAS? What role do faculty, professional staff have in setting administrative priorities?
Okay. Strengths and weaknesses in relation to the position. So I've directly managed or had oversight over a large portion of what is in the portfolio, so to speak, of this position. Having had direct oversight of facilities and of IT and risk management, office services, our facility rental, mailroom, transportation. There's a number of things there that excuse me, I've directly managed or have, you know, oversight over with the directors. And management is a transferable skill, right? So I've mentioned to people that I'm kind of the utility player where I am. Because it's recognized that I have solid leadership skills and I can go in and help groups move along where they need to be. And again, to bolster up what needs to be bolstered and to change what needs to be changed. I believe there was an HR component to that. So I've been a part of all of the processes in HR, right? From onboarding to training to counseling out or counseling to better, to negotiating excuse me, with more than one bargaining group, sometimes to do just kind of fun stuff like determine what maybe salary increases or some new things are going to be, and sometimes to do some unfortunate things like institute a night shift for our custodial staff because it was unfortunately needed, but it's where we had to go. I'm sorry, can you repeat part of that? I feel like I'm missing a piece, aside from the faculty involvement.
It was administrative, professional staff, and then there was also the strengths and weaknesses about the position.
Thank you. I would say that my weakness for this particular position would be that I haven't had direct oversight of a finance group. I've managed a budget of about $28 million with local bond funds, with state funds, with general funds, but I haven't had direct oversight of a finance group. So I would say that relative to this position, that's probably going to be my weak side. I'm not a CPA, right? My MBA is in management, not in finance. I understand finance, I understand fund accounting, but that would probably be my weak spot in here. As to the role of faculty and professional staff of setting priorities, I mean, that's all a part of the process, right? We're part of a shared or participatory or whatever word it is here, but we're part of a system that everyone gets to have some input, right? And I love it, frankly. I love that faculty have input. I love that staff have input. I love that administrators and students all get to be a part of driving us forward and saying, you know, what's really important to the college right now is that we accomplish these sorts of things and that we can then collectively get together and make sure that we're, following our core values, right? Whatever it is has to address excellence and equity and student learning. But without the buy-in from our faculty and from our staff and from our students, we're never going to move forward at all, right? We're going to be stuck back in the Stone Age forever. So I think they play a key role, absolutely. And then importantly, the folks that are involved in the process directly and that are part of the budget committee and are part of our resource allocation teams, part of their big responsibility is to go back and tell everyone what happened in those meetings, right? Because while we can make the information publicly available, is anybody reading minutes outside of a handful of people, right? And it's important to communicate things out aside from, oh my God, you will not believe what they said in this meeting and the sky is falling, but hey, here's these really great initiatives that are coming up and we can all be a part of it, right? If we just choose to share out the information from the things that happen, you know, and it gives the faculty that haven't been appointed to the committees, the 25 people on campus that are on every committee, it gives everyone else a chance to at least talk to them and say, hey, this is really important to me, and I don't want to give up every other Monday, you know, to go to a meeting, but could you bring this back? And it begins to bring the dialogue back to the campus as a whole when the folks that attend these things share out what happens. And I think that's actually the most critical role, aside from, you know, making sure everyone's needs are met, but is making sure that's communicated out.
Next question is, what has been your greatest achievement in your career?
Wow. My greatest achievement in my career. Probably spending the amount of time I do working and not being murdered in my sleep by my wife. That is, you know, I don't know that there's a single greatest achievement. You know, I mentioned to people in general that, you know, I believe our careers and I believe our lives in community college are kind of a product, a sum of the whole, right? So we have great accomplishments kind of along the way, and we build great relationships, and we have fun with projects, and we help every day. We help a little bit, right? We help the students just a little bit, and we move us forward just a little bit. So for me to pick one like specific item is difficult. I can say that I've shared the story a couple of times about this big project failure I had in a virtual desktop implementation. My success there was in, you know, keeping it going after it failed and having the people believe me that everything was going to be okay, because I had spent a lot of time ahead of this project building relationships with them and you know, letting them know that I was that I had integrity. I was a man of my word, and when I said something was important, it really was. So if I had to pick one thing, it would probably be my ability to work with people and build relationships and build trust and be able to fail and not get run out on a rail because a big project failed, but, you know, be able to apologize and go and talk to people and say, yeah, I'm sorry, I messed up, I'm human, you know, let's go. But be able to lean back on those relationships that I had formed to make sure that at the end of the day, everything was okay. But yeah, like a single accomplishment for me is really hard to pick, right? I've loved all 10 years I've been in the college system. You know, I've loved giving back. I've loved my time in the classroom. I've loved, you know, my committees. I've truly just enjoyed every second of it. So I'm sorry, but I can't pick one.
What is the most difficult part of working in the Vice President of Business and Administrative Services job?
In my experience, this is a service-oriented role, right? There's a lot of service groups underneath this role, and it's been my experience over 10 years in community college and then a number of years outside working in service that you don't really hear from people when it's good news, right? So the majority of your interactions with people outside of your kind of random committee meetings or whatever is just, you know, it's complaints, right? This isn't working, this bathroom isn't clean, the lawn hasn't been mowed, whatever it is, it's something's going wrong, and that's why I'm hearing from you. So to me that can be, it can have a tendency to get draining sometimes, right? Where like all of your interactions are complaints, but it can also be a kind of a nice opportunity, right, to do the same thing. Say, okay, well, you know, hey, let me help solve this problem and move on. And hey, I can't solve this problem because whatever the reason is. So let's work together to come up with kind of another solution. But I would say that, you know, the majority of these jobs tend to be complaint driven, and that's not fun. But it's okay.
Tell us about the most innovative project that you have led.
So I've been a part of a lot of projects that have been innovative. Most of them I didn't have a lot of direct leadership to, right? Because I've always been kind of that sideline service person. I was always like a part of the leadership team of the project, but I wouldn't say that the sole person. One of the projects that we've been working on at Pasadena City College is this redesign of our student services area, right? So we're taking it from the window to window to window, line to line to line concept of student services to a more open, I can help you with that and with that and with that, cross-training, no walls, just a handful of kind of gathering areas and waiting spaces for students to be in. So it's a fun project, right? It's very colorful, and the architects did a great job in having all these 3D fly-throughs, which is a lot more fun than looking at it on paper. But again, that wasn't my project, right? That was our VP of Student Services project, and I was there as a resource for them, as someone to say, okay, we can do this, maybe we can't do that. The deck on the roof would be great, but we'd have to tear the building down and restart from scratch if we were to do that. But I have, most of my projects have been very collaborative, been very team-driven and team-led, right? So when we did a virtual desktop rollout, there was a whole team of us doing that. We all had our little pieces that we did. When we put on a TEDx event at Moore Park, there was someone else running it. I was just part of the group that helped put it together. And I think that more often than not, successful projects and innovative projects and these great projects that really move us forward and do a lot for our students and do a lot for our community aren't single person driven. I think they're team driven, and they're cross-functional team driven. So my role has always been to be a part of that team and to be a part of the people helping to drive it forward and helping to figure out what we can do to move us forward, move the school forward with whatever goals theirs were. Ours, again, here, excellence, student learning, and equity. But I really think that it takes a village, so to speak, right? And our role is to all play our little part in that village.
Next question. This position has been filled by an interim for more than a year. How will you approach getting to know the staff members directly reporting to you in the DVC business office?
Well, I'm going to talk to them, right? I mean, that's my option, is to certainly I'll speak to the person that's been doing this for a long time, right? Because I need that insight and that help and that the handoff and the here's where we are and here's where we've been and here's where we're going and here are some challenges that I faced. But there's no substitute from calling people in individually and as a group and saying, okay, here's my expectation in general. Tell me how I can help you. Where are you happy? Where are you not? What do you see as critical, and what can I do to be that support resource and that air support, so to speak, to help you accomplish your goals, right? I need to know directly from the folks in my area, what is it that you do, and what is your area, and what are the challenges you face? Is it aligned, is your area currently aligned with our core values and with the strategic plan? Is it aligned with the educational master plan? If not, how can we help get you there? But the only way that's going to happen is to do what I always do, which is leave my door open, allow people to come in, and then set meetings with the group, right? Yeah, let's talk to you on Monday at 2, talk to you on Monday at 4, and then set up those weekly, one-on-ones at least. If we don't need them later, we don't need them later, but without talking directly to the folks that work for me, I have no other way of getting to know them, right? Certainly, I want to hear from others, but and then what problems are there within the department, right? Does IT not talk to facilities for some reason? Why not? Let's get down to that, right? But yeah, it's like I said, the first 30 days is a listening tour, right? And that has to start at home. That has to start with my group and figure out what it is I can do to help.
Question. What do you see as the most important issues facing community colleges in the coming decade? What issues are you most passionate about? How would you address those issues at DVC as the vice president?
Okay. Well, I mean, problem number one is what do we do with all this money we're sitting on? Because obviously we have this huge glut of resources, right? I think, all kidding aside, The most important thing for us right now is, and I've said it a couple times, diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have to address our equity gap. We have to address the fact that our African American and Latinx students are not succeeding at the same rate as our white and Asian students, right? Because despite the fact that we're #1 in transfers here, there's something that's still not being done, right? And we have to figure out what that is. I think the Vice President of Business and Administrative Services can do exactly what I said previously and help to align the budget allocation and the resource allocation to the actual priorities of the school that are helping us to move forward in our core values and are making sure that we weave diversity, equity, and inclusion into everything we do. We're never going to have enough money, right? Only so much can come. We can only chase so many bonds, and we can only, ask the state for so much more. We can only, have our foundation ask people for so much more money. But if we can start to close some of those gaps, and it certainly makes our story better, right? When we no longer have one group of students succeeding at 44%, we get them up a little bit closer to 60, 65, 73%, I believe it was, our Asian students are succeeding at. When we start closing that gap, then we have a little bit better story to tell. Further, I think, from the budget standpoint, the VP of Business position needs to make sure that we're spending our money correctly, that we're being good stewards of our taxpayer funds. We ask the taxpayers of the state of California to throw money at us. We ask everyone we can to throw money at us. It's our responsibility to make sure we're spending that money in an appropriate way, right? And that is to align our resource allocation process with our core values, with our strategic initiatives, and then make sure that we're spending that money. Spend the categorical money where we can, spend the general fund money where we can, but always, always trying to move that ball forward on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And part of that, of course, is, being open to innovation, being open to change, being open to fail, being open to succeed, and not getting stuck in the we've always done it this way rut, right? Because we've always done it this way, and we do great work, so why do we want to change? But I think it's important to kind of push that envelope a little bit.
This question is asking beyond the first 30 days. So please describe what you would accomplish within your first 6 months, and how would you evaluate your success at the end of the year?
I hope in 6 months I've done a couple of things. One, really cemented key relationships across campus. Right? Relationship is everything, and it's absolutely key that I get to know everyone and what's important. From a less fun, so to speak, standpoint, concretely, I would like to see a completed tech master plan and a completed facilities master plan, because I've noticed that those are both a little out of date, at least what's posted on the website. So if they're complete, great, I want to post it on the website, and then I can knock that one off my list right away. But if not, I'd really like to move the ball forward on getting those things happening. I'd like to find out where the budget committee that I'm a co-chair of exactly is, because from the research I did over the past several days, I can't find what's going on there. I can't find the minutes. So I just want to get kind of caught up to speed on where this committee that I co-chair really is, and then see what we can do to help align us properly. But if I wanted to just pick two big concrete things, it would be those two master plans that are at least 2 years out of date, so we can align them with our current Ed master plan and our current strategic plan, and let everyone in the community, our community, at least know what it is we need to do to get us forward 5-10 years, as opposed to going, what were we doing back in 2007, right? And there's great information to be gleaned from old plans, but I'd like to see something a little more current in 6 months, which is ambitious, unless there's already an architect on board, but we'll address that when we get there.
Speaking about technology, how do you ensure the college technology is up to date and meeting the needs of the students and employees?
Okay, so we start with our resource allocation, right? We have to go back to that. But how is it up to date? So that depends on how it's been, how we've done it in the past. Let's assume there's some kind of a 5-year refresh plan where every 4 or 5 years we replace everything that's 5 years old. So part of how we ensure that is let's take a look at what the past 5 years have looked like, and did we have these huge spikes where we bought 2,000 computers this year and 17 computers the next year, because I'd like to kind of normalize that spending so we can plan for it in our budget cycle. There is, in many places there has been a tendency to buy more technology than we need just because it's technology and we think we need it. So I think part of an important data-driven decision-making process is to look at the actual usage of the computers that we have on campus. There's plenty of software out there. In the past, I've used one called LabVIEW, which installs and runs as a client in the background, and will allow the tech folks to pull up a report and say, okay, in this room, these 30 computers, at most at one time we had 7 turned on. And that was only for 2 minutes out of the month, and typically we needed 3 in there, right? Whereas this room was used at full capacity all day long, every day. So maybe what we need to do is, although we've always had a 30-station lab over here, maybe we need to cut that back down to 5 because it's never really utilized more than that, and put our resources somewhere where it is used more often. Again, depending on use on campus, maybe we need more mobile technology, maybe we need less mobile technology. Maybe part of the problem is there's no Wi-Fi signal out at the opposite end of the lake, so the students can't go there to get their work done, so they have to move over into one spot, right, to make sure they're getting things done, and those seats are already taken, and they really like to watch the geese in the lake when they do their homework, right? So I think, first it's assessment, it's evaluation, it's looking at our past habits, it's looking at our current usage, and then pointedly, it's driving it forward while we're looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion, and making sure that we're meeting the needs of as many students as we possibly can, and meeting the needs of those students who are at a disadvantage. Do we have or need a laptop loaner program for students that don't have a computer at home? I don't know, but let's look at it, right? And let's see what it is that we can do to help fill in those gaps. But interestingly, as a person who's been an IT manager for 10 years, I don't believe the answer is always a computer. I don't think it's always throw technology at it, and that's what's going to make us work, right? As a faculty member, I love having access to a computer in my class. I love students having access to computers in the class. But even more than that, I really like tables and chairs that move, right? So I can put them in small groups and go plop down with them and say, hey, what is it we're doing over here right now? So, I think it's really an honest assessment of the tech we have and can help us kind of determine the tech that we need. And then let's look at normalizing spending, because these things tend to run in horrible cycles that really hurt every 5 years and gives us a glut of stuff on the others.
Okay, next question. Describe a situation where you had to build a team from a variety of individuals. How do you deal with derisive team members?
Derisive? Oh my goodness. Well, hopefully you don't have derisive team members. I'm sure we wouldn't have that here. So again, teamwork is an everyday thing. It's not, oh, I need to build a team for this project, I need to build a team for this project. Teamwork is something that has to be woven into everything we do every single day, right? We need to integrate ourselves and each other into all of our decisions and all of our projects and all of our working together, because we can't do it in a silo. We can't do it alone, right? I need you, I need you, I need you in the back. We all have to realize that we're working towards a common goal, which is bringing our students, along and meeting them where they are and helping them to get where they need to be and breaking down the barriers that we can. But there's not a single thing that you build a team for. I build a team for everything, right? Because I believe it's important to have everybody's input. I believe it's important that faculty are involved, that staff are involved, that students are involved, and that anytime something major is happening, that we get buy-in from everyone, we get opinions from everyone, we get some helpful direction from everyone, and then we continue to push it down that path of moving the ball forward and closing the gaps. Because at the end of the day, that's our job, right? Our job is to make sure that all of our students are succeeding at approximately the same level, and hopefully it's way, way, way above that national average, which I know, in total we are here at DVC. But you can't do it without building a team for absolutely everything you do. Because once you start operating in a silo, you lose those relationships, right? You lose the support structure that you worked so hard to build. You lose the trust of people. You lose the willingness of people to work with you, maybe when the project doesn't directly impact their area, right? But if I can count on you when I'm working in her area because you were able to count on her working in your area, then that helps, right? We always have that team put together.
Are there any other questions from the audience? If you have any, you can lift up your index card and then give that to Sophia. So we have about 6 minutes left, and you'll have about 5 minutes for a final statement.
Pictures of my dogs. Yeah, no worries.
What is your experience working with employee unions and budgetary matters?
Separate or combined?
And?
Okay. Perfect. Thanks for clearing that up. So I mean, I've spent 10 years in a collective bargaining group, right? Either as classified or as management, but I've worked with multiple unions. The most problematic thing, most troublesome, not problematic, but most difficult thing I ever addressed with a collective bargaining unit was, and you may have come in a little on the later side, but because I talked about this briefly earlier, but was moving a custodial shift to a graveyard shift. When previously there used to be one, and then there wasn't one, and it was really time for it to come back. So it was a difficult negotiation in working with the union and getting their buy-in. That's why it's important for us to have an overnight shift for 27 of its unit members, and for them to kind of come to our side and see why it was a necessity, an unfortunate one certainly, but why it was a necessity. As the facilities director, I had regular the local union leadership because I needed it, right? I had to, goes back to that relationship. I had to work with Rudy because I needed him and all 67 of his unit members to be on my side and to help me push things forward, or it's just going to get ugly, right? And anytime you make a whole union mad, it's just never a pretty thing. So I've always had, I think my mic had stopped working earlier. So I've always had a very open and a very good and respectful relationship with my unions because I have to. Like I said, without that team building and that mutual respect and that relationship, nothing gets done effectively. It's contentious, morale is low. Everyone decides we're going to work to the contract, which means we're going to follow everything to the letter, and just nothing effectively gets done. So I've spent 10 years in community college with collective bargaining units. I've had them, come along for the ride with me on disciplinary matters. I've had them help me, figure out what it is their teams need, and all the time it's a constant give and take and a constant conversation to make sure we're all, playing on the same sheet of music. And then budget. So my direct budget experiences was about a $28 million budget with multiple funding sources. So a local bond, state money, and then general fund money. And I was members of, back at Moorpark College, and the facilities resource allocation committee. So I was able to see, all of the requests that came in, both for tech and tech-related projects and facilities-related projects, see where the overlap was, and kind of move the groups together to see what projects it was that needed to be funded with the totality of it all. But and actually I spent a brief time on the, the Budget Resource Allocation Committee at Pasadena City College as a management association representative. But when I was promoted to an executive director, they stripped me of my committee membership because I was no longer part of management. I was part of the administration. But I did spend some time on that one as well. Sure thing.
What ideas policies, or initiatives do you believe will help improve on-campus sustainability practices? If you have a previous accomplishment in this field, what was your biggest achievement?
Okay, so what, sorry, what policies?
Ideas, policies, or initiatives do you believe will help improve our on-campus sustainability practices?
Okay. Well, it appears to me that actually a lot of the sustainability practices are already happening. I see solar on the roofs. Coming in, I see the signs that say that the lawns are being watered with recycled water. I don't know if you have a cogen on site or anything like that, but it certainly wouldn't be a bad thing to look into. But and I'm sorry, but I don't know the amount of material that's currently being diverted from landfills by way of our recycling programs. So I would want to at least start there. It looks to me like we're doing a pretty good job of separating at least our landfill from our recyclables. I don't know about composting, just because I haven't gotten deep into the weeds here on that yet. I mean, there's plenty of land here. There's plenty of rooftops, so certainly solar is an easy one, and we can usually partner with cities to make them pay for the solar installations. I saw several vehicles driving around that it's possible, depending on the distance you go, we could look at electric vehicles or something like that. But again, I unfortunately, I don't know deeply enough in the weeds of where we are here to really speak to the specific initiatives I would do here. But I would probably start first with the big ones of car charging and solar, because they're low-hanging fruit, and there's typically funding available to help us do that. We don't have to push all that money in themselves. If there's anything that's not being watered with recycled water, I would certainly say we should look at that. And again, I would want to know what the diversion is. I assume there are AQMD reporting in projects, and that we're already purchasing carbon credits. But if not, that's something else we could certainly look at. But again, I don't have enough details on your budget to say what needs to be brought versus what we can just expand on. But I would probably start with those and then kind of see where it takes us. Mm-hmm.
So we have 3 to 5 minutes for final statements that you would like to make.
Great, thank you. So first and foremost, thank you guys again. I appreciate those of you that are here. I appreciate those of you that are out there watching. I've spent 2 days here. I really enjoyed the college. Like I said, I love the open space. Like twice the size of PCC, and it took me forever to figure out where anything was, just because it's beautiful and rolling, and it's not just the concrete jungle. And I think that's amazing, quite frankly. I love the seating. I love the students are happy. And again, I really have enjoyed kind of getting to be a part of it for a couple of days, and like attending the diversity talk yesterday with Jeff Chang, and just kind of watching everyone interact. Seeing the students in the commons is fun. They seem to be happy. They seem to be well adjusted, and they seem to all be just kind of enjoying their time here. Certainly, my student ambassador loved it here, so that's good. Andy said, for what it's worth, that the Bay Area is better than LA, and I don't know, but that's what he told me, so I'll have to trust him on that. But really, I'm excited for this opportunity. I've enjoyed meeting you guys. I've enjoyed your campus. I've enjoyed the area. I got caught in some random holiday bazaar thing last night when I went over to grab something to eat, which was kind of cool to see the community coming together and Christmas carols out there. Yeah, I mean, really, I'm looking forward to the opportunity to serve. I'm looking forward to being here and filling that interim role that's been there for a year with someone that's going to be here long term. And then hopefully I can convince my wife to come up too, because commuting's rough, but I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. But at any rate, again, just thank you.
Check 1, 2. Like that. So it's live right now.
that were not here at the beginning of the other candidates. So just to remind everyone, we have 50 minutes, and for the first 3 to 5 minutes, the candidate will just give an introduction of himself, and then we'll have about 35 to 40 minutes for questions, and then we'll have 5 minutes for a final comment from the candidate. And we have Sophia, who's here. She's serving as the EEOC. If you do have a question, you should have picked up an index card. If you haven't, there's some at the back table. And so you can write your questions down, and she'll screen those questions before I have an opportunity to read them. Also, everyone should have received a yellow sheet, so make sure you're filling out the yellow sheet. And this is for an evaluation of Daryl, and we'll collect those at the end of the session. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce Daryl Hayden. So Dr. Daryl Hayden is currently the Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of Business and Finance at California State University in Stanislaus. Before that, he was the Associate President for Financial Services as well as a University Controller, both at Cal State East Bay. He holds an EDD in Educational Leadership from CSU East Bay, a Master's of Business Administration from St. Mary's College of California, and a Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration from Cal State University East Bay. So with that, I'll have Daryl introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. Very happy to be here tonight. I feel like I'm talking to a classroom. Everybody's sitting in the back. I'd encourage anyone who wants to move forward, but I won't take it personally. If you want to just kind of hang back, that's fine. The one thing on my education that wasn't mentioned that I think is actually really important for you to understand is I started my education career here at Diablo Valley College way back in 1980. Many of you weren't born back then, but that's okay. For me, community college is the entry point for the vast majority of students that are seeking either a higher education, technical training skills to enter the workforce and that sort of thing. And in my 12 years of higher education, I really see that the role that is played at Diablo Valley College and at community college is really pivotal to helping address the education gaps that exist with students, particularly first-generation students and students of color, and also in terms of creating the economic opportunities for students and their families to progress. So I'm here, I'm very happy to be here because for me, 40 years ago, I started my educational journey, and as a lifelong learner, it's kind of closing a circle to come back to a place that I started with an opportunity to serve in the role of vice president here. As I mentioned, I had 12 years of higher education. My entire career has largely been in the area of computer operations, finance, and accounting, and the last 12 years in higher education. So it's really a background that has well prepared me for the role that you need filled on this campus in terms of helping to manage the operational or service side of the campus. And that's what I see the role of vice president of CFO on this campus playing is one of service, customer service. And that's the way that I review or see my role compared to both serving the leadership of the campus, the staff and faculty of the campus, and ultimately, and most importantly, the students that come here for an education. It's a service role, and it's one that requires a capability of operating a number of different areas of responsibility or portfolios, and it's something that I have done successfully in my career, both in higher education and before that in the for-profit and not-for-profit worlds as well. So a lot of focus in delivering services. In the portfolio I had when I was at CSU Stanislaus, it really fills out the roles that are required here in terms of the accounting, the finance piece, capital programs, facilities, information services, the risk management piece, public safety, all of those internal groups that quite often don't necessarily touch students directly, but certainly provide the services that the staff and faculty need in order to properly serve the students on this campus. So really a very strong background in delivering higher education services, a focus on making sure that we serve our students well, and then an underlying kind of core focus on helping to achieve areas of equity, equality, and more importantly, social justice, which is really to try to remove a lot of the barriers that to higher education. And so basically, I've been preparing 40 years to interview for this job, and I'm really quite happy to be here. I think that as I look at the next 10 years or so of my career, I think this would be an excellent opportunity for me to take the considerable amount of experience that I have and be able to serve the students and to serve the folks that serve the students here on this campus. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I know that you've got a list of questions, and so I can go a little bit more into my background as I respond to some of the questions. Are you providing the questions, or are you coming up with the questions?
Yes.
Okay.
So the first question is, why do you want this particular job, and why specifically Diablo Valley College?
Okay. All right. I kind of alluded to that a little bit in my initial remarks, in that I've gone to this school. My wife's gone to this school. My wife and I, we have 5 kids, of which 4 of them have gone to this school here and at the San Ramon campus. So very familiar with how important this school, Diablo Valley College, has been in my family. And also I realize the impact that you have here for the students that attend in terms of creating opportunities for them to move forward and to progress. But I'll tell you what, when I first started here, I enlisted in the Marine Corps when I was 17, finished my training and as a reservist, got out in December, and I started here in January of 1981 as a bright-eyed, enthusiastic student with no idea what I wanted to do. And I actually failed miserably that first semester. I was focused on trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Having spent time in the active military, going into a classroom was highly boring. And it took really until summertime, when I went back into the military for some more training, that I realized I wanted a career as an officer in the military, in the Marine Corps. And so that was my motivation. And I suspect when I look at students that are on this campus, and when you engage with students and talk to students, a lot of them come here not knowing why they're here. They just know it's kind of a next step, an important next step. And so one of the things that I think is important, and where as a campus advisors and evaluators and faculty play a role, is helping to connect students with what they are interested in, with potential careers, in a way of getting them engaged in their education, rather than just coming here like I did, where I wasn't sure what the direction I was, but finding out what I wanted to accomplish and realizing that I could accomplish what I wanted to through an education delivered by DVC was really a starting point for me, and it's one that has never stopped paying dividends in my time. And so having started here, having gone out into the workforce, having had a lot of different roles, and more recently serving in higher education in a role that essentially overlaps the role that you need here. For me, as somebody who's, like I said, I've got a 15-year-old home, so I got 10 more years I need to work, at least until he's done with grad school. So I've got some significant amount of time that I want to invest, but I want to invest it in an area that I think is most important and will have the biggest impact. And frankly, I think community colleges are where that's at. I think there's more impact to more students in a more meaningful way here than you'd see in a lot of the 4-year public universities. And so I'm here because I want to make a difference. I want to help students achieve success. And I realize with the skill set I have and my focus on service and in supporting the delivery of those services, in supporting staff development so people are positioned to be successful in supporting students, that all that coming together makes this a really nice opportunity for me to be able to do what I'm good at, but to do it in an area that I have a personal connection to, and that I feel like I would be able to really be very focused on and supporting what the overall mission is of your school.
What would be your goals for the first 30 days of your job?
Well, the first 30 days of any job is really about learning who all the people are, learning the processes, and learning the underlying financial and business issues. This is a campus that goes back a long ways, and so I would have to meet with everyone on campus, in terms of the cabinet, in terms of the major deans and colleges, and then start doing an assessment of who's on campus, what the issues are, what the roles are. Just walking around from on my tour earlier today, I can imagine the facilities folks have a really long list of things that they're concerned about in terms of issues that they may have. Just trying to maintain a campus of this age with the types of architecture that's around. They probably have a fairly long list of deferred maintenance ADA projects and other types of things that need to be done. At the same time, probably classroom technology needs to be updated. You know, you're always chasing the need because there's never enough resource to do it, and that's why you need to build a basic understanding. Now, you gave me a month to try to do this. It actually is a longer-term process than that. It takes a while to really understand a campus community. And so far in my discussions I've had with the president, with the other members who have been interviewing me, no one's told me that there's a problem that needs to be solved. And so from my perspective, that means I'm not coming in to change everything. I'm coming in to support what's here and identify the areas where there's opportunity to make those incremental improvements that we need to make. The biggest challenges in higher education right now that I see, particularly with the new funding model for community colleges, is how do you have a sustainable financial plan? And so as I understand what the needs are of the campus, as I get to develop a relationship and understand who the folks that I'll be working with on cabinet, with the president, and with the leadership across the campus and with the different communities that are represented on this campus, in the back of my mind is how do we achieve the long-term structure, planning, and financial modeling that we need to support the strategic plan and to support the prioritization of the allocation of resources. So it's a long-term project, but it really is about being engaged with the different people across the campus, about meeting different people and hearing different perspectives. Because a lot of people can look at the same issue but have a lot of different ideas on how to address those issues. And I would need to build my understanding before I took any action. And really what I prefer to do when I talk about taking action is really collaboratively look and work with the groups that are involved with the change to make sure that that change makes sense and that it takes place in a time frame that works for folks. I'm not big on throwing change from the top and causing all kinds of chaos. I'd rather build from the bottom and understand what the issues are and then working with people to address those issues in a way that makes sense for people and that they understand, and more importantly, that they feel like they've been listened to and included in the process or in the problem solving. So there's a lot of work to do with that, with any new role, but particularly on a campus this size.
Okay, thank you. Given your knowledge of our current educational master plan, decision-making, program review, and resource allocation processes, how would you, as our next VP BAS, support our efforts to implement our educational master plan? And then where do you see opportunities to improve our resource allocation process?
Okay. As I mentioned, the funding model for community colleges changed a little bit. And then also as we see the changes and fluctuations in enrollment, perhaps potentially declining enrollment depending on the demographics of the high schools that feed students into your programs, as well as those returning older workers that are coming back for more training, more education. It's a very difficult financial model to be able to predict what the needs are going to be for a campus 3, 4, 5, 10 years into the future. And a lot of decisions that you make now have a long-term impact when you're talking about bond measures and student fees, creating new spaces on campus, that sort of thing. And so you really have to tie together the short-term objectives that you may have with the longer-term objectives in terms of what will be financially sustainable over the long period of time. And so really the challenge is how do you address the very diverse set of very important needs at the same time work with the limited financial resources you have, and then also build in a little bit of a hedge against potential economic downturn or funding downturn. And so what you really need to do, and this is a process that I've used at CSU Stanislaus, is what we did is I took what was a very broken budget planning process when I got there, and we pulled together a cross-representational group of folks from the campus. It included faculty representation from the academic senate, staff, and student leadership. And we would actually start at ground zero looking at the strategic plan as the backdrop of our overall guide to how we would do resource allocation. If we had issues, because you mentioned the program review and you didn't mention accreditation, but I think that's probably a factor too. You'd have to look at where you think there may be issues or challenges or deficiencies in those areas, or where things are going well and you want to make sure they keep going well. And you need to build a list of priorities across the campus, both on the academic side, on the student services side, and on the infrastructure and operational sides. And so there's a lot of people that can participate in that process in terms of generating and identifying need. Everybody's good at identifying what's not working or where they think there's additional investment. And so you really have to gather all of that stuff up. So we created a process where at the beginning of the academic year, we'd spend time reviewing what the financial results were for the previous year so that we could pull it all together and people would understand how last year worked, what reserves, what money we had left over at the end of the year, and what the funding looked like for the future year. Once we got the budgets in through the CSU process, you'd get the final budgets in later part of July after the state passed their budget. And then you'd know what resources were being allocated to your campus. What you really want to do, though, is before those resources are even allocated to your campus, to have those priorities laid out across the campus organization so that you know what that looks like. And what we did, and this is a role where I guided but didn't drive or direct, where the budget allocation or the budget advisory committee, they actually would sit and identify, listen to the input from the cabinet members. They listened to input from the academic senate, from the staff groups, and they would take all that information and list it out and then prioritize it. And so they were really looking at it very holistically. Every item tied back to the campus strategic plan, which at this point is about a year and a half old, after maybe 2 years at this point. And so it was really driven from what the long-term vision, goals, and strategies were for the campus. And it was a process that included a cross-section of campus. It included the representation from the different groups. So everybody had an opportunity to participate. Plus you add in open forums, you add in opportunities for people to provide feedback and information back to the campus. And out of that process you get a prioritized list. So by the time the money is approved, you've got a prioritized list and you can move right to action. You don't have to sit, once you figured out what the budget model is for the next year, you don't have to sit around and try to figure out the priorities. You can start taking action immediately because you already know what the priorities are, what the game plan is. And so that sounds like a very complicated process. You know, the reality is in higher education, a big chunk of new money almost always goes to academic affairs to fund new faculty positions, especially if you're in a enrollment growth environment. At CSU Stanislaus, they're at 108% of their authorized headcount. So they haven't declared impaction, so they take all eligible students. And so, you know, I'm into service. I want to make sure that higher education is accessible to students, but you have to have a basic budget model that ties together the priorities as viewed by a wide variety of people on campus, ties into the funding model that's something that's sustainable over a long period of time, but that you can, once you've made the decision, you can move forward and start implementing and then and trying to hold people accountable and then deliver those results that people need. Okay.
Next question. Describe your experience with the ADA, Americans with Disability Act, with regards to facility and human resources, particularly projects that you've completed that exceeded the minimum requirements for building codes and state law.
Yeah. ADA is a huge issue. It's a huge issue for anyone that's got a service or a business, particularly in higher education. ADA is critical, and this campus, based on the elevation changes, represents an obstacle for a lot of students who have mobility issues to be able to move from one part of the campus to another. But there are other issues too, because there's many disabilities that aren't necessarily visible when you look at it. What I have seen is the need for student services, for accessibility services, only going to grow. We're seeing more need coming out of and more accommodation at the K-12 level, and so we should only see that as being an area that we need to continue to provide service. I'm going to take your ADA issue and expand it because literally, you know, a large portion of your deferred maintenance is really about accessibility, and it drives a lot of the decision making on campus because you can't do a renovation in a building unless you've updated the bathrooms to be ADA compliant, walkways, safety hazards, a whole laundry list of things. I don't know what the backlog list is here, but I know that at the school I was at, it was in the tens of millions of dollars to do everything that you need to do. Some cases you build a new building because it was easier than trying to retrofit an old building and make it compliant. But ADA is only a portion of it. Making the campus so that students can traverse from one place to another is only part of it. The other piece is the ATI piece, which is the accessibility technology tools. You know, when students go into, and what do you use here for your, what's your learning management system here? Canvas. When you go into Canvas and faculty have loaded PDFs or they have put links to YouTube videos. Are those accessible for your students? So it's one challenge for students to be able to move around campus safely and in an efficient manner, get from one corner of the campus to another while they have time between classes. It's another thing if the course materials, if the services and really the videos and all the different things that help to create the environment, the learning environment for students, all of that needs to be addressed too. And while the ADA stuff is easy to document and easy to create a list, the ATI piece is actually where I think there's more risk to a campus because we don't know what we don't know. And unless you've gone through and used Ally as an assessment tool on your learning management system, you're not going to know how many of the documents you have loaded out there are accessible for students. And so really the physical ADA piece is an important part of providing service on a college campus. But there's a lot of other areas in terms of accessible course material, accessible websites, and being able to support students that go through accessibility services. So all of that needs to be reviewed. And there really is only one standard, and that is you have to provide those services in a way that doesn't impact a student's ability to gain an education. So that's an area that we'll always need to provide more focus and, in a large extent, more resource over time. Okay.
Question: what are your strengths and weaknesses related to this position? What role do faculty and classified professionals have in setting administrative services priorities?
Okay, well, you got two questions in there, but maybe more. You know, as I mentioned before, I've spent a lot of time doing this job at CSU Stanislaus and in other roles on the finance and accounting side at East Bay, as well as time I've spent in other roles in education, in other roles in the corporate world. And so really I'm coming in not so much needing to learn how to be a VP or learning how to be a CFO, but really I could focus my time on learning about what the needs are and who the people are on this campus. And so that's one of it's one of the challenges of making a change is if you're trying to be new to a VP or new to a campus, it's hard to do both well. So I'm coming in with a skill set to be successful and with a mindset to be successful. It's really learning the campus needs. And so the strength is the experience that I would bring in order to this particular campus. The weakness is I don't know where I'd be starting from. You know, what's the issues that this campus has, what are the challenges, and the more quickly I can learn what the needs are, what the priorities are, and where the challenges are, the faster I can get to work to help to meet the needs on this campus. And really the challenge with any change is understanding who the people are, understanding what the needs are, and understanding just how you work with a very diverse group of students, staff, and faculty to meet a variety of different needs and how you do that. But the biggest part of how you address those issues is really being out and talking to people and making those connections at a personal level. And I think that ultimately is the key. But the strength is my background. The weakness, I'd say, is just not knowing enough about this campus to know what the key priorities need to be. What was the second part of it?
What role do faculty and classified professionals have in setting administrative services priorities?
Well, I mentioned I have a customer service focus. I would see that staff and faculty and ultimately the students they serve as being my focus. So it's critical that in order to provide operational services, whether it's IT, facilities, or any of those things, that you listen to the customers and you understand what the needs are across the campus. Because at the end of the day, my job is to serve my customers. And the job that my staff would have would be to serve my customers as well. So I would say that for the groups that you've mentioned, and actually students as well as other folks on this campus, that they should be driving the operational needs and helping to prioritize those operational needs. If a faculty member goes into a classroom and the classroom technology doesn't work, that's a failure. And what I like to say in my CFO VP role is usually if there's something that's not right on campus, something that's not working, it's my fault. And so I take that service perspective very, very seriously. And I take the understanding that that staff share with me, that faculty share with me as a real benchmark of whether we're meeting the campus needs or not. Now, as an example of one of the things that we did is when I got to Stan State, they hadn't had a computer refresh for 7 years. And so we took some operating money that we had left over at the end of one year, and we set it aside, and over the course of 18 months, we refreshed every full-time employee's computer. We refreshed every computer lab computer. We replaced most of the secret college computer labs and also accessibilities computers. That was because when I got there, some of this was already in motion, but the campus was screaming for good technology, basic good technology. Nothing, not fancy stuff, but just stuff that would work. And so you get that by listening to people, and that's what I do. I try to listen to people and understand where the needs are. So faculty, staff, students, they drive what operations is. Doesn't do any good to think you're doing a great job if your customers aren't happy.
Okay. What has been your greatest achievement in your career?
Oh, I've had tons of great achievements. A lot of different areas of satisfaction. I'll share one story that kind of brings, to me at least, why it's valuable to be in this space, why it's valuable to be in higher education. It's a long story. I'll try to make it very short for the purposes here, and then I'll talk about some other ones. About 3 years ago, I was leaving work. It was about 5:30. I was at East Bay at the time, maybe longer now, maybe 4 years. I was leaving East Bay, and when you go out of the main administrative building, there's a walkway down the parking lot with some benches on it. As I was going by, this young woman was crying hysterically. She was so upset. She was talking on her phone. She was very, very upset. And, as a human being, it's like, oh, this is awful. What's the situation? Do I interrupt or not? As I'm going by, I can hear her talking in her phone the words financial aid. Now, I've never had responsibility for financial aid, but I know how it works, and I know the people involved. So I carefully got her attention so I didn't scare her and asked her what her issue was, because I heard that she mentioned financial aid. And she said that she wasn't able to get her financial aid going into the summer quarter, and she talked to all kinds of different people on campus, and no one was able to help her, and she was going to have to drop her class that she needed to take in the summer so she can finish her degree in the fall. I gave her my business card and asked her to come see me the next day because I told her I could help her. And when I got in, and I got her name. And so the next day when I got into the office, since I had student finance, it's easy. I could make sure she didn't get dropped for non-payment. And then I called my counterparts over in financial aid and explained the situation. When the student did come to see me, and her name was Samantha Lopez, first generation student, 4th year, ready to graduate, good GPA, first gen, and like I said, a financial aid student. It's the type of student we want to serve. And she had gone and talked to everybody she was supposed to. She did everything the right way. And I'm using her name with permission. Her name was Samantha Lopez. It still is. And she had done everything she's supposed to do the right way. She talked to the financial aid folks. They didn't get her FAFSA because they changed the rules that year. Then you had to submit your current tax return. Her family didn't get that notice. She wasn't told about it, so she didn't send in the final tax return, so she didn't get her financial aid. But she talked to the financial aid folks, she talked to the student finance, she talked to the cashier. Everybody she talked to gave them the information they had from their perspective. And their recommendation was she drop the class so she doesn't wind up owing the balance. And, recognizing that that's really a dumb reason to drop the class, and knowing that there's an issue with financial aid, and this was a student that was qualified for financial aid, it was a situation where by the time I got to her, her parents had already faxed the tax return to the FAFSA folks. They had to go to Kinko's because they didn't have technology at home, and help to resolve that issue. But I'm just thinking, on that one day, I happened to be in the right spot and help one student who really deserved better. She needed a campus that would understand her situation and support her. Everybody tried to do their thing, but there wasn't a coordinated response to it. And I happened to be, fortunately in the right place at the right time. She probably would have been fine without me because she was a very capable student and would have continued to advocate for her. But it just goes to show how much of an impact that any one of us in higher education can have on a student. And so for me, one of my greatest successes, to answer your question, was being there that day to help that particular student. Because no matter how many students come through a college or a university, they graduate one at a time. And that one at a time, that one student is probably impacted and supported by a dozen different faculty and staff, and maybe even a handful of administrators along the way. And so for me, that's a good way of keeping in mind what's important for me is making sure that I'm there to help that student, that the operational teams that I lead are there to help that one student, and that for the rest of the campus they have the support they need so they can focus on helping students rather than getting their email system to work properly. So that's one example of successes. Another example of successes that I'd like to spend just a second on is really kind of my focus on staff development. I've been very fortunate in my time in higher education because I've had the opportunity to work with some really outstanding people. But for me, a key piece is, especially if you think about it, I was introduced as doctor. I finished my EDD about 2 years ago now. So I've been somebody who's been continually in the education piece. But I've also, as I advocate that for myself, I've also been a big advocate of professional development, staff development for the folks that were in my organizations and frankly anyone else who would listen to me. Because I see that as being a key way to help people achieve their career goals, to achieve promotions and greater economic prosperity within their roles. But it's also a great way if you invest in your staff, you invest in your managers, then they know that their contributions are valued. They know that there's an opportunity for advancement and success. In 1 year at East Bay, when I had accounting services with about 55 people, we had 8 positions that we wound up filling that year. 6 of them were internal promotions. And that was because we spent time and energy and focus on professional development and grooming people. Now, we still posted those positions, and the best candidate happened to be the internal candidate. We always pick the best candidate. We always have that requirement. But there's nothing wrong with making sure that you've spent the time and energy developing internal candidates. So amongst my other successes is, as a CPA, I've signed off on 2 other higher education employees getting their CPA. And I'm currently sitting on a dissertation committee for somebody else in higher education who's working on their ed doc. So those are personal satisfactions for me, personal accomplishments. On the professional side, having a financial organization, one of 23 campuses, to continually excel in the system. It's hard to judge whether accountants do a good job or not, right? There's not like a tally sheet. It's not like even you do a class assessment or a learning outcomes review. It's hard to know whether, is it balanced, is it not balanced? What we did in the CSU is if you made it on the front cover of the CSU report, then you were in the top 5 campuses. And so another sense of success for accounting, which usually doesn't get a whole lot of fanfare, was being able to, on a pretty consistent basis, make it onto the cover of the system-wide financial statements, which demonstrated that compared to our peers at other campuses, the groups that I had the opportunity of working with and leading consistently performed well when compared to other campuses. And so for me, that shows that we're doing the right things. We're getting the work done. We're getting it done with a high level of quality. We're meeting the timelines, and we're sharing the information in the way that we're not only required to, but that we expect of ourselves in terms of providing information to the Chancellor's office in that case, and then also back to the campus community. So that's only a couple examples of accomplishments. But really, in higher education, there's so many ways of measuring accomplishment and success. But it's through impacting students. It's really creating opportunities for staff and employees to advance, and it's hitting the big targets of getting your financials done, keeping the lights on, making sure Wi-Fi is working, and that the campus feels like it's a safe environment despite all of the hate speech that exists in the world today. So those are all ways of measuring success.
Okay. What is the most difficult part of working in the Vice President of Business and Administrative Services job?
I don't know if there's a difficult part to it. I actually think this is the best job on a college campus. Sorry, but I have, there's no short of challenges, and frankly, even if there's a ton of money, you still have to figure out a way to spend it and get things done. So I think there's always some challenge, there's always some pressure, there's always some outside influences that are kind of driving how you react to it. But for me, I've been entirely and very happy working in higher education. I actually kick myself because I wish I would have found it sooner in my career, because I've never found a role that was more satisfying in terms of just being able to come to work every day. Now, it was always nice when the term ended and you could find parking, but aside from that, the energy when students come on campus is amazing. And I live for that energy, and I live for that interaction with students. And so for me, there's there's lots of challenges, but there's also lots of opportunities to help and make improvements. And so for me, I don't come in going, oh my, there's all this stuff. It's, let's get to work. Let's figure out what the priorities are. Let's listen to what the needs are, and let's work together to figure out what those solutions are. I don't think I've ever approached higher education with kind of a deficit mindset in that, oh, it's going to be hard, there's going to be challenges. It's like that's part of the job, is trying to work through those issues and deliver the services that people need. So for me, it's I guess it's a glass half full type of thing, in that it's very, I look forward to those opportunities and trying to help move an organization, move a school, and the students themselves move forward. Okay.
Tell us about the most innovative project that you've led.
Oh my, I've done a lot of projects. I'll date myself a little bit. I actually, when I worked for Pac Bell, installed email. Okay. They probably hate me back then. Back then it seemed like it was going to be a really big windfall, improve efficiency. We just found out a way to create work faster, not necessarily better. So a lot of different projects, a lot of different opportunities. From a technology standpoint, I've implemented systems, mainframes, ERPs, upgraded systems, changed learning management systems, done a lot of big system stuff, implemented accounting systems, acquired companies to PeopleSoft, all kinds of kind of finance, accounting, geek stuff. But I think the real accomplishments are really in the more refined areas of technology and of service. Every once in a while you'll have big projects that have a big impact. Document and imaging system on base type of thing. New learning management system, because I know all the community colleges went to Canvas. About half of the CSUs are, the other half are trying to figure out if they're going to go that way. Those are big changes, but really the most successful changes and the most continuous ones are really the small incremental changes that happen when you are reviewing business processes, when you're evaluating policy to see if the policy drives the right behavior and not really inefficient wrong behavior. And so it's a combination of big projects, little projects, and then understanding it. When we talk about, and when I talked about, oops, I guess I shouldn't hit the mic, huh? Sorry. When we talk about coming to campus and learning the issues, some of the issues are process issues. Some of it is, investment and need for technology. Some of it is that we have outdated policies that we need to update. And we have to address other types of things. And so all of those, there's a different set of solutions for all of those. And so some of it's a system change. One of the changes I did at East Bay before I left there was we'd used OnBase for document imaging, and we decided to use that for workflow. In the CSU, they implemented PeopleSoft. It was a 3-phase project, and after the first phase was done, they declared success and never pursued phases 2 and 3. I don't know if you've had that experience before in your various roles, but phase 3 was workflow. And so we had a paper travel claim process. People would fill out a form. It was a really slick form. It was a computer-generated form. It was very slick. But it was still paper. People would staple their receipts to it and send it in. And no one would know where it was or what the status was or what was happening. So we created a workflow solution that the receipts, the requests would transmit to a supervisor. We'd know where it was. If the supervisor sent it back, we'd know they sent it back. And when it got to AP would know where it was. Now, how many of you sent something to AP and there's a receipt missing, a question on a receipt, and somebody sends you an email or a phone call? Well, you wind up with a big stack of those things in AP that no one really knows what they are, but everybody on the campus is really mad because they didn't get their claim and they're not sure what the status is. They don't know if their boss didn't forward it. They don't know if AP is sitting on it. They don't know where it is. So we created a process that automated that workflow, that created opportunities for people to see. So when I submitted my claim, I saw when my boss approved it. I saw when AP opened it. I saw when AP approved it and moved it forward for payment. And if they didn't, they would send me an email saying, I need X, Y, or Z from you. And you'd reinsert yourself back into that process. So that was something that was a game changer for the campus, because if you think about travel claims, it impacts everybody, particularly if you're in the colleges and you're dealing with, trying to provide that administrative support to a large number of campus personnel. It's a nightmare. It can be a full-time job that you never really feel like you've been successful at. So we created and implemented that software as a way of one, creating visibility and driving accountability, but also it wound up being a work savings thing. Now, it's hard to quantify what the value of that is. So sometimes the changes are really big. Sometimes they're like this workflow process through OnBase, and sometimes it's more like, we don't really need a receipt for something under $5. And so there's different levels of change, but change has to happen at all different stages, all different levels, and it has to be a continuous process. And so that would be the response I have. Now, I'm not sure I answered the question completely. If I haven't, then please let me know if there's another nuance that I haven't addressed.
That's fine.
Okay.
We have about 5 more minutes before your final statement. I definitely want to get to 2 questions from folks in the audience. So the
Okay.
next question, the faculty union meets bi-monthly with the Vice Chancellor of Finance to review budgetary information, review input, and discuss faculty budgetary concerns and
Good.
questions. What is your experience working with faculty unions, and how would you see yourself developing your relationship with the faculty union at DVC?
Okay. Well, I think that's the bread and butter of university, isn't it? And the faculty are the front lines in working with our students, and understanding what the needs are and what the challenges as a faculty is a key piece. In my experience, I've worked closely with the Academic Senate, members of the Academic Senate, and their finance committee. Now, they do kind of an ongoing incremental budget process, so there doesn't necessarily a continuous discussion about needs and things like that. But I welcome that type of communication, and I've often met regularly. In the CSU, there's 7 different unions on campus, of which the faculty is one of the most important ones. The staff union is one of the larger ones. But I would meet regularly with faculty, with staff, because the best way to address issues is to find out about them when they're still percolating, and then you can figure out what the issues are. And so I would welcome an opportunity to work very closely with the faculty leadership and identify what the issues are, what the priorities are. I'd want to work very closely with the provost and the academic affairs leadership to make sure that we're all integrated and we're all aligned, and that this all ties back to the strategic plan. But I would welcome those discussions, and frankly, my approach is I've always kept office hours on my schedule where anybody can come in and talk to me. I love talking to people about whatever the issues are. And one of the risks that when you're at the VP level is that bad news doesn't usually travel up very fast or very well, or gets kind of changed along the way. So I really welcome the opportunity to directly talk to anyone, faculty or staff in any role, to really understand how my group is or is not providing services that are needed, and aligning the financial decisions for faculty to what we're trying to do from a strategic planning perspective. Those would be really critical discussions. I actually would expect that to happen. I'd be surprised if those discussions weren't a regular and common kind of process, something that would happen on a regular basis. And the same with the staff groups as well. You need to create those connections with folks, and you need to be able to do it in a way that people feel and can build a level of trust, and that you deliver on what you promise, and you understand and listen to what the needs are and try to address those. I'm way over time, aren't I?
No, you're good. We have one last question, and then you'll have some time for final comments.
Okay.
What ideas, policies, or innovations do you believe will help improve our on-campus sustainability practices? If you have a previous accomplishment in this field, what was your greatest achievement?
Okay. Sustainability should be in the backdrop of everything you do. One of the things that's probably not completely transparent or obvious on this campus is your facilities folks have been involved with sustainability for a long time, because a lot of the waste, energy management, things like that has been on their radar for years. I'm not sure how large or how focused this campus is on sustainability. That was an area that reported directly to me at Stan State, and we had a campus sustainability committee that included faculty fellows that were focused on creating a strategic plan for sustainability. And so I'm both professionally been very focused on sustainability. At the same time, my oldest daughter is at Davis with an environmental policy major, working on her master's degree, and actually plans to devote her PhD work to the areas of sustainability in terms of policy. And so for me, both from what I do at work and then also what my family supports, it's very much about sustainability. So I don't know if there's a committee already on this campus. I know there was an effort underway that some of the students were sharing with me, that they were doing some kind of waste management sorting and all of that. But there's a lot of different levels of sustainability. One of the challenges for sustainability, particularly energy management at this campus, the way that the administrative offices are developed and the way that the faculty officers are developed with individual air conditioners for each unit, that's about as energy inefficient as you possibly can. So trying to drive improvement in sustainability, which absolutely has to happen, along with the physical challenges of a campus environment, as well as the financial constraints, because to try to address sustainability does require investment. So that has to fit into the overall prioritization of all the other things that we want to try to accomplish on campus. And I'm not sure if sustainability is built into the curriculum here as well as one of the kind of the overarching learning objectives, but that would be something to be explored if it's not already in place. So it's a critical area. Okay.
And now we have 5 minutes for your closing remarks. Any
Okay.
closing?
All right. Well, first off, my thanks to everyone who showed up. I know late on a Thursday, this is probably important for you that you're here, but I appreciate the effort it takes to actually show up and listen to this. You know, I've shared with you that DVC has a very close and personal connection to me and to my family, and I'm very well prepared to come in and help support this campus and the president and the cabinet and what they're trying to accomplish. And that's done by listening to the folks on this campus and understanding what the issues are and trying to prioritize and address those issues over a period of time. It's one that I'm highly motivated to address. I like the opportunity. I suspect there's some challenge involved. I like that challenge. Nobody goes in the Marine Corps at 17 unless they like a challenge. I still have that sense of wanting to be challenged and wanting to try to accomplish hard things. And so to the extent that I can come in and help support this campus and help support your students is really, you know, a perfect thing for me. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to talk with you tonight. And my mic suddenly got very loud. And I appreciate the time. So thank you. I would hope to be, I know I'm under consideration for this, and I'd love to have the opportunity to serve you. So thank you.
started. I don't see anyone new, but I will repeat anyway. So the format for this open forum is we will have 5 minutes for Derrick to have an opportunity to have opening remarks, and then we will have 35 to 45 minutes for Q&A from the audience, and we've collected some questions. And if you have any questions that you would like to write in, there's still index cards in the back, and those cards will be picked up by Sophia. She will be screening those questions. She is our EEOC for this process. And yeah, and so then I'm going to go ahead and introduce Dr. Derrick Pinto. He's currently the Vice President of Administrative Services at Laney College. Prior to that, he was the Chief Business Official for John Swett Unified School District and also a principal at Tuscan Unified School District. He has an EDD in Educational Leadership from the University of California at San Bernardino. He has 2 masters. One is a Master's of Arts in Educational Administration from Cal State University of San Bernardino, and the other one is an MBA from McGill University in Montreal, Canada. He also has 2 bachelor's degrees, a Bachelor's of Education from York University and also from Canada, and a Bachelor's of Arts that is a Specialized Honors Public Policy and Administration from York University in Toronto, Canada as well. Okay, all right, so Derrick.
Hello, thank you. Oh, I can hear myself. Sounds good. Hi, good evening. My name is Derrick Pinto. Listen, I want to thank you, hardy souls, for hanging on in the evening. I know it's late, but thank you very much for attending. I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate the opportunity to introduce myself to you. So I promise I won't even take 5 minutes. So I just wanted to tell you a few things that I thought were important for you to know. So the reason for the application to the position, which is a parallel one to the one that I currently hold. And so there are a few reasons for that. One is definitely the job itself, so it's one that I'm currently doing and familiar with. It's a perfect marriage for me between business and education, which are a couple of things that I have really enjoyed and worked on, had the pleasure, the luck to work on throughout my career. And the fact that the job is here, right next door to my house, so in my backyard. And I know that the district is a winner. So I have done a little bit of research, and you're very fortunate to work at a quality institution. It's been a pleasure to read about some of the things that I've come across. So everything from the education master plan and strategic plan to looking at the budget, looking at the various successes that you've had. So in terms of retention rates and transfers and so on, it's and enjoying a great reputation, and so appreciate that. So that's the job in the college and the district, and definitely the community as well. So because I live here, I live next door, we're invested. I know the quality of the community, and nothing would give me more pleasure than the opportunity to work in my home community, where we school and live. So my kids, I have 3 children who are 14, 11, and 8, and they're schooling locally. My wife is a French teacher at a local high school, and so we're in the area, and we attend all kinds of events that are in the area here in Martinez and at in Pleasant Hill. So everything from the little fairs, community fairs that they have going on, and you know, the festivals and music and so on in downtown Pleasant Hill. So we really enjoy the community, and it's a great opportunity for me, I feel, to spend my time here working and investing and getting some results that would benefit the community and move it forward. So job, district, and community are things that I'm very interested in. That's the reason for my application to the position. So a couple other things, personal and professional, that I thought you might be interested in. So I did mention that I have had the opportunity to work in both business and education. So in the field of education, I've worked in 3 countries in the field of education. So worked in Japan, Canada, and now the United States. Worked at a variety of levels, so from K through 14. So I have served as a substitute teacher, a teacher, an assistant principal, a principal, the CBO of a K-12 district, and now I'm the VP of Administrative Services for a college. I think that I mentioned the business experience to you, so not only am I currently the Vice President of Administrative Services at Laney, but I previously served as CBO of John Swett, which was a small district in Contra Costa County. So at lots of work at a very granular level. So skeleton staff, high-needs community spread out over multiple towns, right? Crockett and Rodeo in the East Bay. And so that was some work that I did and was very proud of. During my time there, I was part of the district team lead for a couple of bonds. So we had sorted out that there were some definite needs there with regard to infrastructure. And so we managed to pass the two largest bonds in the district's 90-year history. So it was a $22 million retrofit for the high school and a brand new, and funds for a brand new building that was $40 million. And so because it was a small district and the work was granular, had to get out and did everything from those community walks and signposts to phone banking and the whole 9 yards, worked with community groups. So I think that's important for you to know. Something else is that I have had some outside business experience. So it hasn't only been in the education field. So I did complete an MBA, and post the MBA stepped out into private industry and worked for a couple of large multinational corporations, the largest of which was Xerox. So at the time it was 146,000 employees and $26 billion in revenue. It was a large, complicated organization, but I never got as much pleasure out of that as I did out of teaching. So it was nice for me to step back into teaching, and now I've ended up where I am. So that's it. Those are a few of the things that I wanted to tell you. And so I'll open it up for questions. Yeah.
So if I have the questions.
Sure.
What would be your goals the first 30 days of your job?
So I have thought about it and thought a little bit beyond 30 days, because I think it's going to take a little while. So for anybody that's changed jobs, it can be quite a challenge, right? So it would be a new district, new site, new people, new software, and in multiple sites, right? So here at the Pleasant Hill and the San Ramon campus. So I think a few things are important. So the first thing that I have on my list to do is definitely having a kind of a structured, collaborative, structured inquiry. So by that I mean getting out to see people both here at this site here and also at San Ramon. So to conduct light interviews, right? To find out how are we doing so far, what do we need to start doing, what do we need to stop doing, and so that's a way for me to get to know them, a little bit about their jobs and a little bit about what administrative services is providing them, the level of service that we're providing to the stakeholders, right? So I think that that's important. I think that getting a good tour of the district with maintenance and facilities personnel is very important. So getting to know the sites inside and out, visiting the classrooms and the other spaces is very important. So getting that tour, not only of this site and the San Ramon site, but also the other colleges, so that I get a good feel for the district. So getting out to Los Medanos and Pittsburgh and Brentwood, and then of course Contra Costa to see that place. And I've seen the district office already, because I was telling the interview panels earlier that I'm a little bit nosy and happened to be in downtown Martinez, and so of course stopped by the district office to see what was there. And so I was very pleased with what I did see there, right? So the welcome signs outside the front door, the photographs of past presidents and board members, and I just felt that it was a recognition of diversity with the welcome signs, and also a respect for the past, with people's contributions being valued. They're immortalized on the wall in picture, so I thought that was important. But so finishing the tour, definitely important, and then going through the HR process, so HR and onboarding, critical. Going through the collective bargaining agreements, also of vital importance. So getting to know processes and policies of the district is important. And then post that, digging into different things, so like the software that I'll be working with, so the financials, getting some training on any software or things that I need to know, and any other policies or procedures that I need to be aware of, so digging into those documents and that paperwork. And then from that, drawing out a table of priorities. So if I have to do it in 30 days, then maybe I'll compress it. But the plan is stretching it out over 100 days to get to know people and have them see me, so to be visible and start to form some relationships. Getting to meet the bargaining unit leads, Marisa, met one already, or classified senate, I'm sorry, classified senate. So that's important, right? Classified and faculty senate, and so on, getting to know everybody. So that's it, that's the plan.
knowledge of our current educational master plan, decision-making, program review, and resource allocation processes, how would you, as our next Vice President of Business and Administrative Services, support our efforts to implement our EMP? Where do you see opportunities to improve our resource allocation process?
Okay, so this is a challenging question. This is a learning curve for me. It's going to be something that, so I'm not familiar with your comprehensive program review or your resource allocation process. What I can speak to is what I know, so I'm currently doing that at our place. So I can tell you a little bit about that. Our place seems to be a little different. The model seems to be a little different than it is here, but would certainly seek process improvement if that stakeholders felt was necessary. So with regard to the comprehensive program review, we do it at our place. So we're in the middle of it right now. So comprehensive program review and annual program updates or annual program reviews are taking place right now with a December 20th deadline. Post that deadline, those reviews will then be validated, and then those anybody that has a comprehensive list of the resources will be drawn up and then will be forwarded to the various committees. We have multiple allocation committees. So we have a faculty prioritization committee, we have a classified prioritization committee, we have instructional equipment and library materials, we have a technology committee, and we have a facilities committee. So then those in turn, if they have some funds available to them like IELM, will then make a list of priorities and what they're going to fund, and then those then ascend to the Budget Advisory Committee. So the Budget Advisory Committee, which I co-chair, then reviews the items that have been forwarded, and we also create our own list of priorities and how they're to be funded. So we're also doing a resource allocation process, so an additional resource allocation process. I'll talk about that in a minute. So once we have done that, it then goes to College Council. College Council makes the recommendation to the President, and the President can either choose to accept or deny, and does offer an explanation as to why she has accepted the recommendation or rejected it. So we get that feedback at subsequent College Council meetings. Resource allocation, when I talked about that, so resource allocation, we've created a little process where we, in loading the new budgets or in the new budget year, so governor's budget coming up, very exciting time. I know you've got it, might have it circled on your calendar. But in January, the governor will give his preliminary items. And so those numbers, when they filter down to the colleges, and we're a 4-college district, we'll then farm those out to the various cost center managers at our place, right? And so we'll give them their discretionary dollars, and then they will tell us where they would like to place their discretionary dollars. We load those into the budget. What we've done is we've said that we are only going to load their budgets at 90%, and so we take the extra 10% out of each of the cost center managers' pool and create a pool of funds, which the Budget Advisory Committee also has discretion over and then can allocate out if there are funds available. So I wanted to tell you that that's our process. I understand from this afternoon's, one of my conversations this afternoon, is that there's only one prioritization committee here. Is that correct? Yeah. You have a program review committee. So it would be a process that I would have to become familiar with. I don't know whether you're in the process right now or what the time frame for your process is. I would assume it is roughly the same as ours because, post-January, you're starting to work on things like position control as well, who's in which cost center and are all the, is everybody's coding appropriate, et cetera. And then in the May timeframe, the governor, of course, will offer the May revise, and then you're trying to wrap up your year, so we have our purchasing deadlines come in April for tangible goods, and then first week of May for services. Everything has to be delivered by June 30th, and then we roll into the new year, and people want to start spending right away. So we try to make sure that their budgets are loaded appropriately. This year they did something different, which was had us load 80% of things like grants and categoricals in advance so that people were ready to spend when July 1 hit. So this process, if your process is significantly different, then it would require, me to have a look at it and understand it. And then, of course, I'm not going to make any decisions unilaterally, but I would work with whichever personnel were connected with making that decision a review is necessary. Kenyatta, was that all right? Huh. Was there more to that question?
There was, where do you see opportunities to improve the resource
So, yeah.
allocation
So
process?
unfortunately, I can't answer that question at this time. That'll be on the ground. Thanks.
Next question. Describe your experience with ADA, Americans with Disability Act, with regards to facilities and human resources, particularly any projects that you have completed that exceeded the minimum requirements of building codes and state laws.
Right. So I've just been made 504 contacted our place. I've had it previously, but we haven't had to, with renovations or modernizations, et cetera, whenever you're touching a building, you've got to bring it up to code. So it ultimately becomes a little more expensive. I haven't had to work with this to a great degree, but we are having to, so we do have several consent decrees currently, at Laney where I'm at. The infrastructure is rather old, and so there are lots of projects that are underway, and so we have been involved in suits and other items where people are trying to have ADA access, and we need to make facilities improvements, and we're currently in the process of doing that. So an example might be a door project that we've got going on. So it does take quite a while to get, arrange for the vendor, get contract approvals, once you've sorted out the source of funding, and then to get the projects sequenced out and, in short order. It's a rather complicated process. I haven't had to do it to a great degree of detail, and I'm learning about the 504 item, like being the contact and addressing those items. I've had to address it at a much lower level in previous positions that I've been in. We haven't had a lot of complaints or concerns in those areas, but we do treat them, of course, seriously, like with the door project and the elevator project we also got going. So we do have elevators that are out which do not allow students to access our bookstore, which happens to be at a lower level. So we have to develop a workaround to ensure that students can get access to the bookstore. It's worked relatively well. So they do get an escort, and there are pathways for them to access. So that's another example that I can think of that has to do with ADA.
Your strengths and weaknesses relative to this position, and what role do you see faculty and classified professional staff have in setting administrative services priorities?
Okay, so
You want to start with the first one? What
Could
are
you-
your strengths and
Yeah.
weaknesses relative to the Vice President of Business and Administrative Services?
right, so yeah, I'll take them one at a time. Strengths and weaknesses. So strengths, well, so I feel that I have some good experience in the position, both at the college level and then K-12. Having worked on the instructional side of the house, I do realize very well how dollars translate from the business office to the classroom. And so I've had that experience that may set me a little apart from other candidates you might see, maybe not. But so I think that's important. Strengths, I think I bring all kinds of things to the role. So definitely leadership. And I don't know if you've had access to my resume, but so I think that I've evidenced that in previous positions. I bring things like leadership, communication, definitely communication skills. I've had to, both in oral and written forms, I've had to present at board meetings, I've had to present to faculty and staff, so that's important. Interpersonal relations, so something that I pride myself on is building relationships. I don't think we're in a people business, and we work with people all day long, and our stakeholders, our clients, our students are important. So building relationships with them along with faculty and classified personnel is of great importance. And project management, so having to juggle many things. So currently I look after things like, so under my purview I have food services, I have facilities and college operations, I have the IT department, I have the bursar's office and the bursar's office, and of course the financial end of things, so the budget and so on are all the things that I have to work on. So looking after those things, project management, I think is a strength, and that's something that I would bring to the role, right? The second part of that question is, weaknesses. Well, so weaknesses, yeah, so as I mentioned, I think at the outset, so I'm not familiar with I'm familiar with the college from arm's length. So I don't know the personnel, and I don't know resources that are available, and I don't know the software, and I don't know what skeletons are in the closet, and I don't know. So this would all be a learning opportunities for me, and maybe seen as weaknesses at the outset. But I think that they could be conquered over time, and with support from various people that would be interested in seeing us move forward. So that's the weaknesses part. And then the second part of the question had to do with faculty and classified and their input into
For administrative services.
Yeah, so these are our stakeholders. And so I don't view myself as telling people yes or no when it comes to spending dollars, right? Would like to, sometimes the perception is that the business office says no to things or says yes to things you have to get. So our function is to support you. So to support the stakeholders, faculty classified. They set the priorities. The priorities are set through, and they give voice to them through the various plans. So I mentioned a few of them, right? The educational master plan, the strategic plan, technology plan, the facilities plan. So you tell us where the dollars need to be spent. I provide you with the options. Our office provides you with the options. It says, well, you know, you can have anything you want, but you can't have everything, right? So if you're going to, if you have $100 and you'd like to spend $95 on supplies, then you only have $5 left for whatever else you want to spend. So I provide you with the options to help inform your decision making going forward. Yeah.
Okay. Next question. What has been your greatest accomplishment in your career? And I'm going to give you a handheld mic because that one's going a little bit in and out for those that are on Zoom. Okay.
Hello, hello? All right. Good. Nobody's asleep yet. If they are, I'm about to wake them up. So, greatest accomplishment. You know, it was the greatest accomplishment in my life. Kenyatta? Is that right? Greatest accomplishment in my career. Yeah. Yeah. So I think I'll fall back on a few things. All right. So I think a couple of things that had tremendous impact on me. One was moving to Japan. So I wanted to teach. I graduated with a teaching degree. I was determined to teach. Was a bit of a down cycle when it came to hiring in Toronto, and so I managed to get myself a working holiday visa, which was an agreement between the Canadian and Japanese government and allowed me to travel and work. And so I did. So I left the country. I left my home, and I left my security and my scaffold, my support system, and went to a country that was quite foreign and quite homogeneous. So I was the definite outsider there. Different food, different culture, different traditions, different everything. And so managed to make it work, and made it work for several years, 4 years before I returned to Canada, and I went back to, I went to Montreal, which was a new city for me, and that's where I undertook my MBA. So I'll tell you why that was, I feel that was, so that was my first professional experience teaching full-time and doing it abroad in a foreign setting. Sensitized me to diversity, gave me, I managed to recognize the ability that I could manage to fend for myself, provide for myself. I didn't have a roof over my head or bread on the table. I had to go find a job in a foreign country and managed to do so. And so that had an impact on me. I think my arrival here in the States, I had envisioned it as being a little smoother than it was. So I went from Toronto, which is now one of the largest cities in Canada, roughly 5 million people, right, to the Inland Empire. So I don't know if you're familiar with that, but Inland Empire, so 50 miles east of LA, Fontana is where I started my teaching career here in the States. And actually, they hired out of Canada. So I went for a job interview in Toronto, and they were hiring. So I took the job sight unseen, convinced my wife. I said, hey, it's going to be California. It's great. Look at the brochure. There's palm trees, and it's an hour from the beach, and it's going to be like... And so I got there, and it was a little bit more challenging than we had anticipated, right? But managed to make the transition here to the States. and then over the course of my time here, completed a couple of degrees, so finished a master's and a doctorate, had several children, so we have 3 total, and then, had multiple jobs, different promotions, right, moving from a teacher to a principal to a CBO. So through it all, I hung on to the same woman, right? We're still married, my wife and I. She's put up with me from south to north in California. But I think the most challenging thing professionally was also completing that doctorate degree. So I think that doctoral degree also provided a pathway for me to the CBO position and beyond. But for 2 straight years, I drove 600 miles a week. So we lived in the Tri-City area, they called it, right? Apple Valley, Hesperia, Victorville. I worked outside of Barstow because we couldn't live any closer. We had moved from Silicon Valley. It was enough like to sell my wife on moving to the desert. But we needed to live where we had lots of choices when it came to shopping and childcare, et cetera. So, and I was fine with that. So, but I worked just outside of Barstow, and we served, so it was a 7-school district spread out over 3,200 square miles. So we served Fort Irwin, so where all of the troops were going to Afghanistan would go through Fort Irwin and out. So that was one of our places. But it was a high needs community, difficult. But completing that doctorate, I think, was a great professional accomplishment, paved the way to future jobs, and that's it.
Okay. What is the most difficult part of working as the Vice President of Business and Administrative Services job?
So the real challenge is leveraging every dollar, right, to the best advantage of our students. So we want to be conscientious about being, good stewards of the money. And so some of the challenges have been, spending that maybe needs to be focused and centered around the student. And so I've seen a few challenges with that, right? People are, so they want to spend categorical dollars perhaps on food for meetings, and so sometimes that expense proves to be, amounts to quite a bit, and I think that, anyway, I think that the prime objective is making sure that everybody is focused on spending the dollar, leveraging it to the greatest advantage of our student and our stakeholders. So whatever needs we can provide to support students and support services, things like facilities. I've noticed that the campus is very clean and welcoming. That's a predictor of whether or not people attend, right? They want to come to a campus that's clean and safe and bright, well lit, secure. And so funneling our money that way versus some other things, some other choices that people make is one of the more difficult parts of the job. And people can always be, so working with other people, so wanting to, sorry I stopped you, you were about to ask a question. But I think so it's a people business and relationships are of critical importance. That doesn't always go smoothly, whether it's relationships between colleagues, wants and needs, people, there's a finite amount of the pie available, right? Finite number of resources. And you have several different people who feel like their program is the most important or should be escalated in terms of providing dollars to. And so achieving that balance, facilitating those conversations, being part of it, having an opportunity to give some input, providing people with the correct information so that they can make those decisions, well-informed decisions, is important. So that's another difficult part of the job.
Okay, tell us about the most innovative project that you have led.
So innovative project, well, one of the, I was part of the team, so didn't lead it in its entirety. But I mentioned one, which was getting those new facilities so I was a district team leader for that. So getting those, scoring those bond dollars for John Sweat, which I think was critical, innovative in the way that it was a new building and then modernization project. I think one that I was a part of the team for, had a good hand in, was a technology bond that Tustin Unified. So when I worked for Tustin Unified, Southern California, Orange County, it was a $135 million bond over 30 years. And so it outfitted all of our classrooms with projector, smart board, laptop, microphones. And so it was innovative at the time. It was a one it was the only technology bond, sole technology bond, and then providing the other support services to implement that project. So seeing it at my site, providing information sessions to parents, and then having coaches come in and train teachers so that they could use the technology that had been purchased to the best of its to its best advantage was an innovative project. I was not the sole leader. You know, it was 24,000 students in a 28 school district. I was one of them, but part of the district team which did all of the groundwork to get the item done. I'll tell you the funny part about that was some of the discussions, the parent meetings, right? So never good news to tell people that they've got to pay for another 30 years. They're going to pay towards this bond. Some parents, you know, when we lived in an affluent area, said, well, you know, if you want me to buy my child an iPad or a laptop, then I'll just buy that. Why do I need to pay for 30 years, and why do I need to pay for the person down the road? So being on the front lines of that and having to articulate reasons to support the bond was a challenge. Successful, innovative piece of work.
Okay, next question. The faculty union meets bi-monthly with the Vice Chancellor of Finance to review budgetary information, receive input, and discuss faculty budgetary concerns and questions. What is your experience working with faculty unions, and how would you see yourself developing your relationship with the faculty union at Diablo Valley College?
Yeah, so very important. So any of our stakeholders, it's of critical importance. I'm interested that you have bi-monthly meetings. We don't have that at our place. What I can speak to is not solely the union, but all of the providing information at both managerial meetings to cost center managers, at College Council, where we have all of the stakeholders present, and of course having an open door policy so people are free to come anytime they like to discuss the budget or their concerns. So when we meet, we present all of the month. We're presenting on a bi-monthly basis the status of your funds, and then your grants and categorical dollars, and providing additional support and reports so that people can continue to make decisions. So one of those reports is like an encumbrance report or a pre-encumbrance report. So people have determined that they want to spend dollars with a certain supplier. They open up a dollar and we encumber them so that they're not spent elsewhere, and so that they have an accurate read on what's left in their budget. So providing that kind of information is of importance. Reminding everybody about the budget calendar and those dates is something important, like letting them know when purchase deadlines are and delivery dates are expected and so on is important. I'd be pleased to participate with the Vice Chancellor of Finance in those bi-monthly meetings. I don't know if the other college VPs are welcome or present at those meetings, but that's something I'd certainly like to be a part of, and something I'd like to find out about I would want to find out at the beginning where I'd be the successful candidate. Want to find out what information is shared, how we can replicate it at the sites, or what information we can furnish to help inform those meetings to make them easier, and so that everybody goes with the appropriate information.
Okay. Next question. What ideas, policies, or initiatives do you believe will help improve our on-campus sustainability practices? If you have a previous accomplishment in this field, what was your biggest achievement?
On-campus sustainability. Yeah, I'm not sure I can speak to that one. I'll have to think about that. I'll pass on that one and let me go to the next. On-campus sustainability. I'll think about that. Sorry.
Sure.
Oh, are there examples on the card?
Environmental, I can't read the bottom, sorry.
Right. So that'd be an area of growth for me, or an opportunities. You know, I'd need to get in and find out what was happening, but certainly interested in things like sustainability at our place. We do have a garden which is open to not only community but students, and then items that are grown there are then used in our both in our cafeteria and our bistro, so we have a kind of a fine dining area. And so that's one area. We're always looking to find ways to be more efficient. I think that with the design of the new buildings, so we're slated, so Peralta passed an $800 million bond, and we're slated for 3 new buildings, and so those building designs will, of course, be, the aim is to have them be green. So we have a new STEAM center that's coming, a library, learning and resource center, and a welcome center, student welcome center. So those are the kind of things that will be incorporated into the design going forward. I know that we're conscious of it. I haven't had to lead any sustainability initiatives to this point. Sure.
Okay. This position has been filled by an interim for more than 1 year. How will you approach getting to know the staff members directly reporting to you in the DVC business office?
Right. So I think that I spoke to that question earlier. I think with the kind of that structured collaborative inquiry, getting around to meet people. So I'm not the kind of person that likes to just sit in the office. I think that one needs to get out and around, so we can see what's happening in the areas that I am responsible for. If the buck's going to stop at my office, then I should know what's happening in those areas and should be out visible, readily visible at both campuses, depending on what the needs are. I'd have to schedule time appropriately, right? And so getting to know those people on a first name basis and seeing them often is of primary importance. So I currently hold standing meetings with the directors in under my purview. So we have a every 2 weeks we're meeting to update. I keep a list of priorities. So they have we're tracking it by Excel. We also Excel, I should say. We also have OneDrive. So in the Microsoft suite, it's kind of like Google Drive, where you can store your projects and can work on them collaboratively. So I do use that function as well and share the links with the directors. So any projects or initiatives, items that we're working on, we can go and address those directly. I frequently stop in at food services, like I physically go to the cafeteria to get my coffee or chat with the manager or chat with the catering manager. I do go down to the bookstore, and I'm on a first name basis with all those people, as well as the bursar's office. So I go down there and sit, and we have the opportunity to work on things like extended hours. We're getting ready for peak enrollment. It's coming up in January, so scheduling hours and then this kind of thing. So I'm working with. I walk down the hall on I meet with everybody in my office on a daily basis. So on a near daily basis. I shouldn't say a daily basis. The directors, yes, on a daily basis, and then it's 2 weeks standing. With all of the other personnel, I do attend, like the custodial staff has a standing meeting once a week that I attend, not every week, but once a month I'll drop in, more frequently if necessary, if there's some initiatives that are being supported that I need to support, that the director is leading. So I'll be down there a little more frequently. I know everybody by name. They know me by name. The door's open. They can come anytime they want.
Next question. They're having an event downstairs, so
Yeah, it's
it's okay. What do you see as the most important issues facing community colleges in the coming decades? What issues are you most passionate about? And how would you address those issues at DVC as the Vice President of Business and Administrative Services?
One of the issues I think that's facing us right now, and that's statewide, is enrollment. So enrollment decline seems to be, across the board, seems to be a bit of a challenge. Here at DVC, you're fortunate to have a pretty high enrollment. In other areas, I know that, when you've got a smaller college or smaller numbers, when those numbers decline, and there seems to be a correlate between the numbers, enrollees, and then employment. So employment in the East Bay Area is pretty high right now. There's a very low unemployment rate, so people are typically out working versus at colleges. So we want to have students that are here. I think that a couple of areas that are challenges where DVC has done very well, and I'm very interested to know what they're doing, are those completion and transfer rates, retention rates, so hanging on to students that start the program. That's been a bit of a challenge for us, for our area, right? So very expensive out that way in Oakland. People often leave before they complete because they get themselves a job and then they don't come back. And so we're wanting to see them complete. Now with the new funding formula, it's another challenge, right? So how dollars will be allocated to us. So there's a base allocation, there's a supplemental allocation for students that are impacted, that need to receive Pell Grants or 504 or California Promise. So, and then success. Now there's a success item that's tagged to us. So the number of students that do graduate, the number of units that they're taking. So those are things that we will have to address going forward. So definitely maintaining a high level of enrollment and seeking ways to outreach successfully and have students come. Definitely the funding formula, and then other things like aging infrastructure is an issue. Those are expensive, big dollar items to face. We were fortunate to pass the bond that we did, but it's several years until you get, you're breaking ground and getting projects completed, and so battling that aging infrastructure and is another challenge, I think. The second part of the question was priorities at DVC.
How would you address those issues at DVC as the Vice President of Business and Administrative
Right.
Services?
So I think the influence that I could exert is over the areas that I have purview over, right? And making sure that our stakeholders are placed first and that they do receive the best services possible. So every experience is a favorable one, right? So if I were to give an example of food, let's say. So we want to make sure that if I'm looking after food services, that every student that avails themselves of that service in the cafeteria, the bistro, or Main Street Bistro, or what have you, receives the highest quality food and the best service possible, so that it is a favorable experience and that they continue to patronize that, right? And so I think that's something that would be a priority. Yeah. Hope I answered that question completely. I feel like what was the end of that question, Kenyatta? I'm sorry.
How would you address the issues at DVC
Yeah.
as the Vice President of Business and Administrative Services?
Sorry. So I'll wrap. So the end of that thought was, it's by providing services like that and favorable experiences that you can guarantee that people will come back, right? So it's the same thing with facilities, and I'm talking about addressing decline now, right? And retaining the students that you have is having them have favorable customer experiences. So just to go back and touch, that's the point that I'm trying to make. So facilities, I noticed that the facilities are clean and things are well lit. It's safe. It's not tagged with, you don't have lots of broken windows or broken doors or any of those things. So people want to come to a place where they feel safe and that it's looked after and cared for, right? That's important in retaining students and offering quality programs. So ensuring that instructors have the resources that they need to offer the best instruction that they can so that students are satisfied, right? And that they remain. So that has to do with retaining students and addressing the student decline, so trying to hang on to them, finding innovative ways to attract them to the campus. With regard to the formula, we'll have to see how it plays itself out. Right now it's a hold harmless situation, but in cooperation with the Vice Chancellor of Finance, with the other like positions at the other colleges, with colleagues across the state, right? We're working to, I know they're working to refine the formula, continuing to refine the formula, and so having us be prepared for what the impact of that is going to be to us, being able to provide that information in a timely fashion so that faculty, classified staff, managers are able to cut the code according to their cloth is going to be important. So addressing the funding formula. And then aging infrastructure, you're fortunate enough to be in a good situation. Looks like relatively, the buildings are relatively recent, although I know you've been around since 1949. Everything, with the eye test today, things look like they were in good condition. I know that there are new buildings that are coming up, so ensuring that those, are the construction process goes through in a sequence that is widely publicized to set expectations for people, so you know when ground is being broken or when the building's going up or when it's expected to be completed, and broadcasting that frequently is important. So if there are infrastructure issues, then of course that's something that can be addressed as we find out what the needs are on the campus. I see somebody shaking their head. So. One more.
Time for one more question before your final remarks. So please, we talked about the first 30 days. Please describe what you would accomplish within your first 6 months and how you would evaluate your success at the end of the first year.
Okay, so I'm not sure I can answer the what will be accomplished in the first 6 months, other than ensuring that I know the personnel and the processes and getting to know the software and those kind of things, like the fundamental pieces that I require to be successful, I think will be important. I think the way that I've always operated is kind of to set SMART goals, so SMART being an acronym, right? Goals that are specific, that are measurable, that are results-oriented, that are time-bound, and then working to collect data, right? So it could be hard data, quantitative data, so how many meals did we serve, how many work orders did we address, so you can measure what we've done there, right? And see it, maybe perhaps see it year over year. Did we serve more meals this year? Have we addressed more work orders than we have in the past? And then, qualitative data, surveys, interviews. How have we done with regard to business? Did we do well? Did we not? I think measuring those things, so creating that, having that as a baseline or that information, and then looking at what are the district goals? What are the metrics by which they're measured? Are we falling short? If we're falling short, what do we need to do to kind of fill that and address the shortcomings? And if we're doing well and we're on target, then maybe we need to set some stretch goals. So we do some neck stretching and try and reach ahead, move forward. So I think that I think those are a couple of things that would happen over the course of the first 6 months and the first year. Building those relationships, that credibility, establishing some credibility, I think will be of critical importance.
Okay, so now you have time, 5 minutes for closing remarks.
Oh, I'm not going to take 5 minutes for closing remarks. Thank you so much. I want to thank you for the opportunity. I'm glad that you're here. A couple of closing remarks, just that I'm thrilled to have the opportunity and to be here. I hope I answered the questions thoroughly without rambling. It's not often that I speak about myself for this length of time, so a little bit of an odd situation, but so pleased to have been a part of it. I think that a few things that I'd like you to walk away with are just that I'm very keen on the job, of course, the district and the community. Feel like I have the requisite skills and the education to support it. Feel that I'll come with some strong references from people who know, right, who know what's required and who know me. We'll be able to convey that to anybody that's doing that reference checking. I'm just very pleased to have been a part of the process. So I hope that this time has been enough for me to crystallize the strength of my candidacy, and hopefully I'll see you again before long. Thank you so much. Thank you.